Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for some Saturday night crafting. I'm so excited about tonight, and I hope you stick around for the entire video. It is longer, it's about 25 minutes, but we are going to master masking. I have got a few different ways to do some masking on cards, and I've got a few really cool tricks that are going to kind of give that technique a wow factor, and it's not complicated. So we're going to dive in, we're going to get cracking, and then I have something exciting to share at the end of the video with you as well. If you stick around to the end, you can see a little bit about my personal life and some very exciting news for our family. And whenever I get started with projects like this, I really struggle for inspiration on what to do in terms of colors, what looks good together, what could get me out of my little box that I like to stay in of my favorite comfort colors. And I really like my color cubes. They work really well. They're not cheap. I did buy these with my own money and I did save up for them, but they are fantastic if you struggle with a lack of inspiration on colors. So I wanted to share with you what I do to kind of get those colors ready and how I go about it. So I went through my box, through a little handful of them, picked out the ones that I liked the most, and then I grabbed my little color swatches. This is an idea from Jennifer McGuire. She uses like coin wallets to store her color swatches. And so I've done the same thing. Every time I get a new ink pad, I swatch out the color and I stick it in this little kind of fake binder. And then that way I can go through and flip through and find the colors that I want. And with these color cube cards, you can kind of match up what you've got in your stash and find something that works. So I'm using all inks today. I'm not using any colored cardstock, but I'm using my little color cube to kind of get the inspiration I need for what to do for colors. Now there is absolutely tons and tons of inspiration online. You don't need a color cube to do this. You can go onto Pinterest or a Google search and just find some colors that you really like the looks of, and then find what inks would kind of match those colors that you've got. I really do suggest picking out your colors before you get started because it will take a lot of the brain work out of the whole entire process. The trickiest part of this whole entire process for me was picking colors. So get your colors sorted first, and then you can dive in and have fun with all these techniques. I was going to switch up my colors and do a bunch of different ones, but I am sticking with these 5 colors for the entire video for every single card that I create. Just makes it easier, and I had a lot of fun and I was going with it and it was on my desk, so that was easier. Next thing I'm using is masking tape. This is a mint tape from scrapbookdotcom. I cannot recommend it enough. It is really good tape that allows you to mask on your card and it doesn't bleed through. And I do try and get a second use out of them, so I keep them to the side and use them for die cutting in future, even though they've got ink on them. They are a fantastic value and you can often get them on sale like they are on the screen here. And that's what I did when I bought these ones. I will put everything in the description box below that I used today, so if you want to check anything out, it should be down there. Most of my links are affiliate links, which means I earn a little commission from whatever you might purchase. And it doesn't cost you anything, but it does make a monster difference in my income doing this as a full-time YouTuber. So if you're considering purchasing any of the products I use, if you wouldn't mind using my affiliate links, it means a world of difference to me, and I earn just that little bit more, and that keeps this free channel going and allows me to do it for free because it doesn't cost you anything. YouTube is paying me, and the affiliate links are paying me, so it's awesome. Now we're getting started with the very most basic of masking. You will see this technique having been done 100 times over. If you do not have masking tape, you can use masking paper. That works fine. Gina K is a really good one to have if you are looking for masking sheets. You can cut those up into different sizes. I'm starting out by using the 1/4 inch masking tape from scrapbook.com, and I am just going to layer them down my card like you see here in the diagonal. And then I'm taking my colors and I'm going in the order that they were on the cards, and I'm adding in the color in between. I didn't measure anything for this one. I just stuck down my little strips willy-nilly and hoped for the best in terms of it being symmetrical. I don't really care that much, and in the end I think it looks fine. And all I'm doing is rotating between the colors, following that order, and then starting over again when I get to the end and I put down another layer of pink. And I did start out first by using 2 pieces of cardstock and just kind of holding those over to do my inking because my ink blending tool is quite fat and wide, and so it was kind of going over those lines a little bit. However, I found that if I just take more of that mint tape and put that down, it actually is much easier to mask off that area, and then I can use that sheet of card on the bottom area. Now my inks were quite dry, so I did stop after this card and I re-inked all my ink pads up so they were nice and juicy, and it was just so much easier and quicker. Now you could leave it at that and just peel off your masking tape and have a cute little cool pattern, but I wanted to take it another step further, and this is what I'm going to do on pretty much almost all of the rest of the cards. I'm taking a stencil and I'm going to add another sort of image over top of the masking. So before I take off any of that masking tape, we are going to add on some more of an image. Now, this is the best trick in the world. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but I love this tip and trick. I want to add a subtle background, and the best, most easy way to do that is to kind of have a tone on tone look. So if you were to take a light blue and then add on a slightly darker blue over the top, you get that sort of tone on tone look. But if you're lazy like me and you like a quick fix, you can take embossing ink and get the exact same result. So I'm taking my embossing ink and I'm going over my stencil. I don't have to worry about switching colors. I don't have to worry about any other colors going on or thinking about colors. You just simply add this ink over the top. Now I'm doing a lot of squidging rather than rubbing just to make sure that I don't end up with that ink going underneath my stencil. And when I take this off, you will see the magic. It adds that second layer of color to every one of my colors without actually having had to add any colors at all. When this dries, it stays just like that. You've got this subtle background over the top in a darker shade of the ink that you have used. It is such a genius trick. I love it. It is such a fun one to do. And you can do it with any ink color in a dye ink. I don't know if it works in any other kinds of ink, but in a dye ink, this works brilliant. When you're done that, you just remove your masking tape and you've got this gorgeous pattern, beautiful background, multiple colors. I love it. It is so much fun. This is such an easy card and background to do. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's use the slightly thicker tape now, and we're going to go for more masking and less color. So that one had thin strips of masking. This has got thicker strips of masking, just to give you an idea of how it looks and how it will look at the end as well. So exact same as the first time, we go ahead and add our color down, going alternating between the lines, and then we bring in a stencil and go over the top. Now don't worry, if you don't have stencils, I'm going to share with you how you can do it with stamps, so don't stress if you haven't got a stencil. I forgot to mention that already. There are multiple ways you can do this technique. I'm going to go ahead and lay my stencil over the top, recycle some of that mint tape, and then I'm going to come in again with my embossing ink. And this one is such a fine detailed one. I am really just kind of doing gentle squishing or very gentle rubbing to make sure that it doesn't go underneath the stencil and cause a kind of blurb under it rather than those beautiful crisp lines. This is so easy to do, I'm telling you. You will love it so much when you get a hold of it and do it. Now, if you don't have Wow embossing ink, you can also use VersaFine or VersaMark ink. They're a really, really good brand as well. So here it is all finished. Now all we have to do is peel off that masking tape, and it is my favorite bit of the entire card making process. Lifting off that mask and seeing the crisp clear white underneath is gorgeous, and it's so much fun. So this is what it looks like when you've got slightly bigger lines and a little bit of subtle color. This will work great if you want to add on a nice white sentiment. It'll go really well with that white background. Now, if you don't have stencils or stencils that you like, you can also use stamps, and it works the exact same way. So you go ahead and put down some of your masking tape. This time I'm going for all kinds of directions. I am just going to stick it down all over the place and then fill in those gaps. I used to do this as a child. I used to scribble onto a piece of paper and create a random pattern and then color the inside of my scribbles. So it kind of reminds me of doing that. And it's nice with the masking tape because you can get nice straight lines. Now this is where I bring in that old masking tape again and start using that because I was finding I was going over the lines again. And we're doing the exact same process. So we're just going to add on color randomly. I'm trying to make sure that the colors aren't touching each other, so I've not got the pink next to the pink. And it's quite easy to do when you've got 5 different colors. Not hard. Now you can use any kind of stamps you've got. If you've got a background stamp, if you've got a detailed stamp, any of them work really well. I'm going to use a more solid image stamp because I've got quite a lot of lines going on and I want my solid images to kind of be obvious as to what they are. So I'm starting out by stamping my biggest flower first. I tend to do that. I add the biggest one on first and then kind of work my way down to the smaller ones and finish off with the tiniest ones to kind of fill in that space. So the exact same thing as you would do with the stencil. You're just filling up the background with the embossing ink. And then you get to do the awesome reveal where you peel off all that masking tape and you get to see the gorgeous pattern that remains underneath. And again, you didn't have to use multiple ink pads, you just had to use the sort of embossing ink in the background, that sort of sticky, thick ink, and you get this gorgeous two-tone look to each and every single color on your panel. Now let's talk about removing that white space. So if you want to have a nice bit of color in the background rather than the white space, then it's super easy to do. So in my 5 colors, I kind of went with one of the lighter colors, and I picked the evergreen color, and I'm going to put that onto the background. I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can add it so that it's a light, subtle color rather than a heavy-handed color. I really enjoyed going heavy-handed. Obviously, you don't need to do that when you're doing your masking, but I really enjoy that bright, vibrant color. But as a background color, when we're going to put colors over the top, it needs to be light. So the first thing I'm doing is using my blending tool, and I'm going over it really roughly, lightly, not adding too much more color to that ink blender already. And then that gives me kind of a blotchy but light background, which doesn't matter too much because we are going to cover up a lot of that background, so it doesn't matter it's too blotchy. Now, if you don't like that, you can always do a watercolor wash. So grab yourself some watercolor card. I have this aqua pad here, and that allows you to shift that ink around and give you a nice level, even background without having to have any kind of blotchy or splotchy, and you can get it as light as you like it. So I've taken this brush, which is actually proving pretty useless. It's really annoying. The bristles are very thin and I would have done better to take a bigger, flatter brush, but never mind, I worked with it anyways. And you can just squidge down some color onto a piece of acetate or packaging, and then grab some water and pick it up with some water and your brush. So here's that blotchy splotchy first one, and I'm going to do the same thing I've done as all the other ones, and I'm going to add my masking tape to the background, but this time I'm going to reserve a place for some stamping. So I want to have a sentiment go across my card, so I'm starting out with where I'm going to put the sentiment, and then I'm going to alternate different size tapes. So I'm adding in some of the thicker tape, some of the thinner tape, and doing that random array around the card again like I did on the last one, just to give myself a nice little pattern to work with. But I'm switching between those tapes, so I'm getting different thicknesses of lines and different amounts of that light blue background showing through. I went ahead and filled in all that color off screen so you didn't have to watch me do that again. And I'm grabbing this stencil from Paper Rose, and I'm going to use that for my background. So I've already gone and done the inking, just to again save you some headache of watching me do that. And here's the big reveal. You've got that subtle blue background there rather than the stark white. So you can see the stark white on the back and then the subtle blue on the front, and all those colors layer over it beautifully. So here on the left is that panel I did a watercolor wash, and then now on the left is the one with white, and on the right is the one with the subtle blue. So just a slightly different look to the masking if you want to have that color. Now here is the watercolor card, and I decided to leave a bigger space for the sentiment, so I doubled up on my 1-inch tape and added a bigger space for a sentiment to go. And you'll see these all finish at the end. I finished every single one of these panels for you, so you can see exactly what you can do with this technique and how you can work with it and have inspiration. Now I forgot, and I took off all the masking paper before I did my stenciling. So this one I am leaving as is, and I'm going to do stenciling later on, which I do muck up, but I'm going to show you how you can correct it. And then I did another one off screen just to share with you another one that I wanted to leave a big gap for a sentiment, to kind of have a more of a 1-layer effect card. So you could do this straight onto a card base itself. I will mount these onto card bases, but I wanted a nice flat card, and a sentiment there would go really well. Now, if you enjoyed tonight's video, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment down below. All those things keep this channel going. Every one of those things tells YouTube, oh, I'm amazing and I'm doing great, and therefore they should share me far and wide as well. The majority of my views actually come from YouTube Up Next and YouTube Recommended. So every time you like my video and comment down below, YouTube thinks, wow, let's promote her a bit more. So if you do those little things for me, makes a world of difference, and I am so insanely grateful. Right, we're going to move on to some advanced masking. Now, it sounds complicated, but it's not complicated. It just looks super, super cool at the end. I'm cutting myself a strip of cardstock at 1 inch, and I'm doing 1 inch because that is exactly how wide my widest roll of masking tape from scrapbookdotcom is. So I'm doing 1 inch so that we can come in and mask that 1 inch strip later on. So I'm going to put down my first little strip, and I'm just using it as a kind of measuring guide. So I'm going to push it right up against that first layer of masking tape, and then I'm going to grab some more, and I'm going to push that right up against my little removable thickness guide. Now, obviously you could take your masking tape and use the masking tape instead, but I find that when you use a piece of cardstock, because it's slightly thicker, it's really easy to kind of bud that masking tape right up next to it, whereas when you have the masking tape, it's the same thickness and same height as the other masking tape that you're using, and therefore it's harder to get it nice and tight up against that edge. And you'll see what I mean in a second. It will all kind of make sense. So I'm using this as a little guide, and this is a trick I use from watching videos online on how to do home, like DIY paneling for your wall, and it's worked out a really great trick in card making as well. So I've inked up all my little squares. I'm going to add on my stencil, and I'm going to run my VersaMark through the stencil as per what we've done already. And I was going to try and create a little flap here, but I left it to dry, and then that kind of popped off my desk a bit. So I did go and make dinner for the kids, and then I came back and worked on it a bit later on. You want this to be really, really nice and dry, because we are going to put the masking tape over top of our colored areas, and if it is slightly damp, or that VersaMark ink or the Wow embossing ink is still damp, that tape won't stick to it very well, and then you might have a bit more of an oopsie going on. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all the masking paper, and now I'm going to apply my masking paper in the 1-inch strip over top of my colored areas. I'm only going to do the first one. You could do any one of those squares, but just do one. Then that way you can see where your stencil needs to go. You can line it up exactly where it was before if you hadn't left it as it was the first time, if it kind of popped off your desk like it did for me. Then you can go and add it back on, and then I'm going to create a little hinge, and I'm going to fold it back just like this, and then that way I know that my stencil is exactly where it needs to go, because now I'm going to cover up all the rest of them, and so we can't see that pattern anymore to line it up. Then I'm going to take my stencil, fold it back over, and now we've got the stencil in the exact same place it was when we did the first stenciling. And just to be extra secure, I'm going to go ahead and take some of my little strips and just hold down that stencil so it doesn't move. And again, I've left out the evergreen color, and I'm going to come in with that evergreen color on those white spaces and cover up those white spaces with some stenciling. And this is where it feels like absolute magic. When you remove all that masking tape, it all lines up gorgeous. So now we have got the multicolored tone on tone effect on those colored lines, and then we've got stenciling that lines up perfectly with the stenciling on the colored bits in the white space, and it is gorgeous. This is my favorite one by far. This is a fluke. I thought, what if I do double masking and go for it again? And I love it. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. I love when stuff in my head actually works out on paper. It is so great. So I did this one a couple times. This is the most effort you will do with all the techniques tonight. This one does take a little bit more time, just because you got to allow for the dry time in between and let that sink in so that you can mask it off again. But how stunning! This is the leaf one, and it is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. These ones were my favorite backgrounds by far. I feel like a genius. I'm not gonna lie, I'm well proud of myself. I don't often have these moments where I'm really quite proud of myself, but this is one of them. I was so pleased with how these turned out. So now I've got all my backgrounds ready to go. I have got beautiful designs ready to make into cards, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to turn all these into cards, and we're going to have a card for every single background to give you some inspiration. Now, to make sure I'm not making you too bored, I'm going to do a couple on screen, and then I'm going to share with you all the cards that I finished off screen. So I thought this one with my nice big wide gap would be perfect to put a big happy birthday right there in the middle. This one is from Waffle Flower Crafts. I'm not sure if it's still available or not, but I'll link it down below if it is. But it's a fun one that you can get a coordinating die with, and it will cut out that happy birthday for you, and it has all these little sub-sentiments. And I thought it'd be really fun to put a big happy birthday right in the middle. And then we've got those gorgeous little gaps all in between. So I thought, let's put a sub-sentiment in one of the gaps. And it works really well. I'm going to use black ink for all of my cards for the sentiment, just to kind of have that neutral color. And I do a lot of black backing with all my cards. So I cut a lot of the cards down and back them onto black cardstock, just to have a bit more continuity with that ink color on the front of my cards. Now this one I did trim down because a lot of them, the stencil was just slightly too small for the card. And on this one it was really obvious. So I grabbed a 1/2 centimeter strip of holographic cardstock from my little strips jar, and I added that to the top and the bottom of my card. So I cut off a 1/2 centimeter off the top and the bottom, and that got rid of the kind of blank space that there was there where the stencil wasn't, and gave a little bit more fun to the card. And then to kind of tie in the holographic, I grabbed these little They're like sequins with no holes, and I don't know what they're called, and I can't remember where I got them from, but they're brilliant, and it's a bag of like 5 billion. They've been going for ages for me, and they're fantastic, but they have kind of that holographic shine to the top of them, and so I'm going to add those onto the front of the card just to finish it off. Keep it nice and simple. I want most of these cards really flat. The last card I'm going to show you has got a lot of dimension, but for the majority of them, they are very flat. Now, I wanted to leave this in for you so that you have got a tip and trick on how to fix something if you totally muck it up like I have. This one is the one that I forgot to add the stenciling on, and so I thought I would come in and add the stenciling on last. And I'm using the evergreen color again, and I want to add that color onto the card, which is the color that I used in the background. It's the watercolor card. Unfortunately, when I put this on, it made the entire background chaotic and really dark. And look, it looks like a hot mess. You're like, what is going on here? There's patterns everywhere. There's color everywhere. And at first I thought, I don't know if this is salvageable, but it is. So I wanted to focus on the middle part because that is where the sentiment is going. So I have grabbed myself a sand eraser. So this is one of those erasers that has got a grit to it. So it's really rough. And this is watercolor card. So it's nice and thick. And you can really sand it down, and it is nice and smooth, and you can't tell at all. So I basically just came in with that sand eraser and rubbed off all that ink and gave it a nice bright background, and then I could stamp over the top of it. So I'm really pleased with how that turned out in the end. So as I said earlier, I kept them really simple, and I did a lot of stamping direct onto the card, and I did mount them onto card bases, but I wanted to keep them nice and flat. So here's that first one we did together. Kept it beautiful and simple. The next one I just stamped happy and birthday on the front. This happy stamp and birthday set are from Catherine Pooler, but they are retired and I couldn't find them anywhere online, so I'm sorry, that will not be linked down below for you. I've got my old handy dandy Trinity stamps. I've got the thank you, I've got the happy and birthday. They are fantastic. This one I really had fun with all those open areas and used a bunch of the stamps from that set, the sub-sentiments, and stamped all over it. For next one I kept it nice and simple, put the big flower on, used that happy again, kind of offset it on the card with a bit of a black background, stamped birthday in the middle of the flower, and that's all I needed. This one I really love. It was a really simple one. I used that leaf stamp right in the middle and then added a thank you stamp over the top. I just kept it super simple and gorgeous. Then this one I wanted to use a full stamp and cover the whole background. These are now retiring. The company is closed down, so there are very limited ones of these stamps. If you want one of them, you got to get it quick. Here's that one that I shared with you just a minute ago where I rubbed out the background that I felt like I messed up on, and I now love it. I love how it looks now that it's all finished and decorated with a few little gems on it. And then have the happy you're my friend stamped in embossing ink. Got the Trinity stamps thank and you in the dies and stamps for both of them. And for this one I went ahead and added some ink to some cardstock, and then I had these cool stickers. They're like holographic overlay sticker sheets, and I put them over the top of that ink. They're actually for making stickers and then cutting out with a die cutting machine or like a Cricut type thing. And I just put that over top of the thank you and die cut it out, and then I used these dies to kind of embellish. And this is my favorite card out of all of them. This is the one I spent the most time on and had the most fun with, and this card was going to some very special people, which you will see the reason for in just a minute. But I really wanted to put a lot of effort into this card, and I'm thrilled with how it came out. So this is one of those backgrounds that I fell in love with. I embossed my die into the background. You can see there, that's the rectangular die. I embossed it into the cardstock. I cut out a bunch of those flowers and then added some ink to the middles, found some flat gems that I could put on the tops of those flowers, and then that holographic thank you looks absolutely stunning, and it's the exact same ink color as that teal that is right over the top of. And that card is going to the beautiful, wonderful family that gifted us with some new family members. A few months ago, we lost our cat. She was hit and killed by a car out front of our house, and it was really devastating. And we really missed her. And we felt like it was a huge hole in our hearts. So I went and had a look, and we found these gorgeous babies. And we have now got Charlie, who is this ginger boy here, who's so stunning. And his sister, who we have named Hazel. And they have come to join us, and today was the day that we welcomed them into our family. And I'm sorry I'm emotional, but it was a really massive thing for us because the cat that was killed was my son's cat, and he struggles with a lot difficulties with having ADHD, and that cat was just the world to him. So we've got these new amazing kitties in our life, and you'll probably see them in my videos again at some point, but we are grateful and thankful, and I wanted a beautiful card for that family who let us have their kittens. So they are part Bengal, they're quarter Bengal, and they are absolutely stunning, and we love them so much. So thank you so much for joining me for this technique tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you again next weekend. And if you want to see more of my kitties, let me know. I'll share them. I love them to bits. Bye!